So, obviously over the last, you're born and bred in Miami. Over the last 2 years, it's kind of blown up. Everything's super expensive. All the New Yorkers came down, brought their restaurants in. All these people from California kind of staking their flag in the ground. What's kind of your take on Miami over the last 2 years?
I mean, I love seeing it become recognized for the amazing city that it always has been. Very, very prideful of my roots in Miami. And again, like I said, I'm born and raised there, and lived there my entire life pretty much. And I've always felt very connected to the city and its diversity and its vibrancy. It really is a special place. And I think for me as an entrepreneur, as I started getting into, my 20s and 30s and started building companies, it was always very frustrating to, have it be discredited because it was in Miami. And that was something we had to live with for a very long time, because for us, it didn't make sense why, folks really didn't take it seriously, because it checked a lot of the boxes. So, with Live Ninja, I started Live Ninja in 2012. And, just raising capital. First of all, it was hard to raise capital in Miami, so I'll give it that. There really wasn't much beyond a seed stage or pre-seed kind of, hey, here's a 25K check, or
like some angels that were successful that moved down there or something.
Exactly. They made their money in real estate, made their money in stocks, in other industries, and are now kind of dabbling. So these are like the 10K checks and the 25K checks and whatnot. But there was really no institutional funds whatsoever in Miami. Series A, forget about it. So you would raise a little seed round, you'd cobble that together, and then you'd go out to Silicon Valley or New York, and you'd give your pitch, get the meeting. Where are you based out of? You'd say Miami. And they'd be like, Miami? Why?
Yep.
And I'm like, because I live there. I'm born and raised there. I don't really know anywhere else. They're like, oh, you're not going to make it in Miami. If you really want to take this seriously, you have to relocate out of Miami and come here. And they were mostly referring to San Francisco or New York. And a lot of people left. A lot of people did go to San Francisco and New York because of that stipulation. They needed to raise capital, and there was no institutional capital in Miami. And remember, it's a very different world in 2012, 2013, 2014. Video chat was not readily available like it is today. It's crazy how far we've come in 10 years, but not everyone was comfortable doing these video calls.
Or Skype, Skype was like the main thing. Skype sucked.
Skype sucked. And Skype had it was only a few years since Skype had even launched as a feature. Remember, Skype was just a telephony, voice over IP phone calls. And then they launched video calling as a feature. And that was still it was kind of shitty and latency issues, and it was pixelated. So you really had to be where the people were. And, so a lot of people wanted you to come out there. And for me, I had just gotten married. We were pregnant, with our first kid. This was 2012. My daughter was born January 2013.
Your daughter's like your co-founder, basically.
She is. Yeah. We'll get into that. She's the real boss. And yeah, we wanted to stay there, and all our friends and family were there. So no, we put a flag in the sand and say, no, we're staying in Miami. And, it was great to see it start to come together. And you mentioned Austin before, we got cut off here. There was really one conference at the time, and that was SuperConf that Austin Bunsen was running. So, I entered that competition, and we ended up being one of the winning startups in that competition, and that really got us going. But we dealt with a lot of frustration. Austin will tell you, Brian will tell you, there were just so many people saying, they were asking us, why Miami? Why Miami? And we just kept saying, why not Miami? And nobody was really able to give us the answer to that outside of there's no funding and there's no engineers. So I think what happened with COVID, and COVID was a big accelerant to all this, is it made the world more location agnostic. Virtual workers became a thing. So now it became a conversation of, well, if you don't have to live somewhere because of work, you could choose where you want to live. What's your short list of where you would want to live if all things are being equal? And Miami obviously rises to the top of that list. So for me, it's been incredible to see all the excitement and validation for Miami, because it is such an amazing city with so much to offer. And I think the thing that I love the most about it is that every entrepreneur in Miami just doesn't have to hear that shit ever again. Why are you Miami? You have to leave Miami. No, you can live in Miami. And just like you can live anywhere else if you wanted to live and still create a great company. I love to see the playing field, leveled out. I think there was an article, right, when we were in the middle of the pandemic, that was basically saying the rise of everywhere. because people could literally choose if you had to be in Ohio because that's where your family's from, or Iowa or Utah, now the infrastructure is
It just
there.
becomes more meritocratic in general,
Exactly.
States and cities have to fight to like keep the best people.
Right.
You can start a company from anywhere, you can get talent anywhere, talent can live anywhere. It's just a more fair, environment.
That's right. So I'm so excited to see what's happening for the city, and I think it's one of it already was one of the best cities in the world, and I think that's just going to compound even more over the next few years.
Do you think anything has fundamentally changed that makes it more appealing and a better startup hub now, or you think it's people are just realizing what was already existed before?
Well, for me, a lot like I still get the same feelings that I always did because I did fortunately was able to find my tribe early on, with the crew in Miami in those early days. There was holes though, however, there was a lack of capital and access to capital in the city if you were early stage tech, and now that's been completely plugged. There's so much VC money in South Florida. I feel like it's the Twilight Zone, Mike, because like I remember getting on a flight, sitting middle seat and coach, flying my ass to San Francisco to beg someone for $25,000 check for my company. And now people are leaving San Francisco to raise money in Miami. They're coming the opposite way. Everybody used to make the trek to Sand Hill Road. Now people are leaving and they're making the trek to South Florida. So a little bit like the Twilight Zone, but I think it's great. So no, I think a lot of the things that made it great back then are the reasons that it's still great. But then you have a lot of like the things and the holes that have been fixed, which make it even better.
Yeah, no, I've loved it as well. How much did Miami play into the start of this, this next company that you're working on OnChain and Cryptoys, just being around the startup ecosystem? Obviously, it's a big Web3 community and NFT space and stuff. Did that play into it, or do you think it would have happened, no matter what?
It's hard to say. I like to think it played a role. So in 2018, I just sold my previous company. It was called Live Ninja, which we were talking about. And I had a 3-year earnout. So from 2017 to 2020, I had to work for the acquiring company. And
it's always fun, right?
Yeah, sure. And it was, IDT Telecom, I got nothing but good things to say about those folks over there. I enjoyed my time there. But I'm an entrepreneur, I need to start things and create things and exercise the creative muscles and serve people. So we had just sold the company. It was 2017. And then like a year in, I had this idea and, we could talk all about the idea and the inspiration, which was my daughter. And, because we were working 9 to 5 for the earnout, we still were able to moonlight if we wanted to. We had nights and weekends and nobody could tell us what to do in our off hours.
Because the entrepreneurial work week is like 80 hours, right? So you have that extra 40.
Yeah, I was already trained from Live Ninja to know like, okay, I'm done at 6 p.m. I can go have dinner with the family, but then I got all night to do
the night shift.
Exactly. So Emilio and Alfonso and I, the three of us who are co-founders at Live Ninja, when I had this idea, I immediately went to them one evening and I said, guys, I have this idea, blind bags on the blockchain, let's create a little fun side project for our kids. And again, we were all Miami guys, Emilio, Alfonso, myself, we're in the Live Ninja offices still after the acquisition. So keeping close proximity to each other in Miami was obviously very helpful because when we had the next idea, we were right there and we chatted about it. So I like to think it played a role then in the ideation phase, which was early on. And then I ran it by a lot of people. 2018 to 2020, nobody really cared about NFTs. As a matter of fact, we looked like we were quite insane.
Was this like before the Dapper Labs stuff with the NBA? That was 2021?
Yes. So NBA Top Shot did not exist. We got this idea. This was early 2018. This is right after Dapper Labs launched something called CryptoKitties. And that was really the first NFT that was a kind of mainstream. Actually, Dapper Labs gets credit for coining the word NFT. They created the standard. But there was no NBA Top Shot at the time. As a matter of fact,
it wasn't mainstream, nothing. Yeah.
Dapper Labs was called Axiom Zen at the time, and they released CryptoKitties, and then they renamed themselves to Dapper Labs to do things more than just cats. I think literally the website, when they renamed themselves Axiom Zen to Dapper Labs, it says, "We're now Dapper Labs to bring you more than just cats on the blockchain."
And you were pretty aware of that project, I guess.
That's
at
what
that point?
inspired it. So like, I had gotten a little bit of crypto kitties. I learned, so the genesis of this whole story was, I'm a big Fred Wilson fan. For folks that don't know, Fred Wilson, Union Square Ventures, early investor in Twitter,
I love his
Tumblr,
little blog posts that he puts out.
legend. And that was the post. Like every day, every morning, I would subscribe to his blog. I would get his, like, I would look forward to his blog post more than I look forward to like the New York Times or anything else. It was like, when's the Fred Wilson blog post hitting?
Yeah.
And he still is the man, but he did one every single day. A blog post every day. It's just incredible.
Kind of like Seth Godin, he does something similar.
Yeah. So Fred Wilson one day, this was right after the acquisition, talks about this new investment company's doing called Axiom Zen, and they're renaming it Dapper Labs, and this thing called CryptoKitties. Don't laugh because cats on the blockchain, but trust me, NFTs are going to be a thing. And to me, digital collectibles, like, I grew up a baseball card collector and a comic book collector and collecting action figures and pogs. Like, this made so much sense. Like, digital collectibles for me was like a no-brainer. This is like, obviously there's going to be digital collectibles out there. So I got really interested and I started buying CryptoKitties, just kind of trying it out. What is an NFT? How do you buy an NFT? And at the same time, my daughter, who was like 5 years old at the time, she was addicted to these things called blind bags, like LOL Surprise and Hatchimals. And
They used to have that with baseball cards at the hobby stores where they'd have like a brown bag and you pay like $10 and you don't know what you're going to get and you open it up and one's got a piece of jersey card, one has a bunch of shit,
Right. Exactly. The mystery packs, Yeah. So this was the plastic toy version, and it became the hottest selling toy in the world for like 5 years in a row. And I think just as any entrepreneur, you get curious from like a consumer behavior perspective. You're like, why this? Why are you so fascinated with this? So you look up the company that made them, they're printing cash. And one day my daughter screams from the playroom. I'm working from home in 2018. And she's like, Dad, come quick. I got the ultra rare. I found the ultra rare. Oh my God, I got it. And I go to see what she's doing. She's holding up a gold glittery plastic doll, and she looks at it for like 10 seconds, and then she throws it in the bin with all the other ones just to collect dust, like the mountain of plastic. And for me, that was the big light bulb moment. As soon as she said the words ultra rare, I'm like, oh my goodness, here's this multi-billion-dollar segment of the toy industry that's predicated on collectability and scarcity. Fred is talking about this thing called NFTs he's doing with Dapper Labs. This is the perfect intersection. We can now do these digitally for the first time ever thanks to NFTs. So I asked my daughter, I said, sweetheart, what if I made you the digital version of these toys where you can collect them, chase after the rare ones, but then when you get them, you can actually do things with them, play games with them, interact with them. Would that be something you'd be interested in? And she's like, oh my God, Dad, that'd be amazing. I'd love that. So that's kind of how the whole thing effectively started. It was right around that time. And remember, from 2018 to 2020, nobody cared about NFTs. There was no NBA Top Shot yet. We actually looked quite crazy, Mike, because we would go around Miami and be like, hey, like we go out to lunch, like, hey, Will, you just sold Live Ninja. Let me take you out to lunch. And like, I'd love to hear what you're doing next. And we'd go out to lunch and I'm supposed to be this respected entrepreneur and had an exit. And they're like, Will,
talking about toys on the blockchain.
What are you doing next? And I'm like, well, I'm still figuring that out. But in the meantime, let me show you this digital panda that I'm working on. And they were like, uh-huh. I'm like, it lives on the blockchain. And they're like, okay, sure it does. It was like one of those moments like these digital pandas, are they in the room with us now?
yeah.
And nobody cared about it, but we made progress here and there. And then 2021, it was late 2020, early 2021, NBA Top Shot launched. And that kind of kickstarted the whole market. And then we started getting some VC interest and, said, okay, we'd raise some money and do this full time and quit our jobs. So that's what we did. Raised a little bit of capital. And then we were kind of off into the races building a digital toy company.
It's crazy. I mean, what do you think, for the uninitiated, like, why does the blockchain and NFTs enable this like collectability to be, really scalable? Or why is that the kind of mechanism and platform that creates the opportunity versus, there's always been collectibles on the internet, or like you play like these games back in the day, like it was a Club Penguin where you have your character and stuff. Sure. What's different then versus now because of the technology?
So I think when it comes to the collectible industry in general, whether it's comics, trading cards, or toys, a big notion is of how rare something is or what the quantities are. And you never really had a mechanism to prove verifiable scarcity of a digital item, because digital items can just be replicated a million times over. Like if you're playing Club Penguin, who's to say that Club Penguin's not going to make 5,000 more igloos, whatever they wanted, right?
Yep.
So you were never able to do that. And the transparency and the decentralization of a blockchain allows that for the first time ever. Verifiable digital scarcity. Digital scarcity can now be a thing for the first time ever. And then you have the concept of supply and demand, which can now be applied for the first time ever to digital items. Yeah. So that's one. Then you have the verifiable ownership. You could say, hey, Mike owns this digital item, and you have full ownership of it. You can do whatever you want with it on any marketplace or application that supports that asset. So if you have an Ethereum-based NFT, any place that supports Ethereum sales or transactions, you could then take that with you, and there's composability and provenance to it. So that opens up a lot of amazing things. And people forget just how powerful the concept of ownership actually is, the concept of owning something. And when you're talking about collectibles, things that are subjective in nature from a value perspective, like, hey, I have my Tua rookie card over there. It is just a piece of cardboard with his picture on it. Who's to say how valuable it is? Why is it valuable? Because Panini, the company that makes these cards, have told me, and I believe them, that there's only 99. It says it on there. I have 71 of 99, and I believe them because they're Panini and they're working with the NFL. So I have some kind of form of trust. The blockchain effectively allows you to validate this without the need of a Panini or anything like that. So
do you think every physical, scarce item will have an NFT tied to it at some point?
I wouldn't go as far as to say everyone will, but I think that you're going to see a lot more happening. What I do see a really interesting use case is high end items, like let's say you take a Rolex, right, or a really expensive watch. What would make a lot of sense is if Rolex, because what does Rolex deal with? They do a lot of counterfeit issues, people making fake Rolexes and selling them as real Rolexes. And sure, you could have the certificate of authenticity, but you could also forge that as well.
I was going to say, some guy's uncle can make one of those in Miami.
But what if Rolex said, for every single watch we produce that's authentically Rolex, we're going to issue out a one-of-one NFT that comes with that watch, that is serialized by Rolex. You see it's verifiable. It comes from the Rolex, account on the blockchain, et cetera. They minted it. It's all verified. Now every single Rolex that was manufactured by Rolex after 2022 comes with a one-of-one NFT. You now know as a consumer to never, ever buy a Rolex where the person doesn't have the NFT associated with it so that they can sell it together. And I think stuff like that is super powerful, right?
And at that point, almost the watch becomes worthless and it's the NFT that has the value, because you would never buy the watch on its own without the NFT almost.
You would have it together, just like you would have that certificate of authenticity. This is just a further verifiable form of authenticity where I all of a sudden, if Rolex instituted that program, I would care less about any physical certificate. I just want the watch, and I want the verified on the blockchain certificate of authenticity that the watch is authentically Rolex.
So was there a moment in time that you talked about the aha moment reading the Fred Wilson post, but that was more maybe to say hey, actually there's a business I can build here. But was there a moment for you that the blockchain and NFTs really clicked for you? Was it something that you saw or read, or was it that post?
I think it was that moment in general, just diving into it. Because again, I always consider myself a collector. There's certain types of folks that have a collector brain, and they're completionists, and they try to complete sets and whatnot. And for me, seeing what an ERC20 token meant and what an NFT meant, and looking at somebody like Fred Wilson saying hey, here's how we're going to do digital scarcity for the first time ever on collectibles from a consumer standpoint. Because remember, blockchain technology up until that point was very much a finance thing. Everything was about Bitcoin and everything was about cryptocurrency. So you have a blockchain network of an infrastructure, but then the first use case and application of blockchain was cryptocurrency. Right. So it was very much about money. So it was what other use cases could blockchain give us? Because you have verifiable scarcity, you have decentralization, no need for a trusted third party. And Fred's blog post opened my eyes. And also then Chris Dixon's right after that, because they also invested in Dapper, about how blockchain can be used for consumer facing applications outside of just currency. And that to me was the big aha moment about okay, blockchain is way bigger than what I ever thought it was. Because to that point, I just thought of it, blockchain is Bitcoin. It's just one and the same. And that was really where the big aha moment where it's separated. Like, no, this is just a decentralized database with verifiable, provable ownerships and verifiable scarcity that you can do so many different things on, without.
What about even non-scarce or less scarce things like home ownership and cars and titles and deeds? Are these things that you feel are all going to end up on the blockchain at some point?
I think so. I think those are great use cases. You're already seeing it a lot with real estate. I know a blockchain pundit could come on here and talk about, well, you could do that now with this, and that. I think they're kind of missing the point there. I think that there's some really interesting things that are happening that allow for the first time ever, just like you would like when you sold a car. It's just like, it's like the Fast and the Furious. Like, okay, you lose the race, give me the pink slip. You know what I mean? Like, the hell is a pink slip? Give me the deed to the car. It's interesting. Let's do this in the right way digitally for the first time ever. And hey, we cannot deny this. If we ask ourselves, are we becoming a more digital society or a less digital society? We're going more and more digital. You and me are recording a podcast in high fidelity live over the internet right now, from the comfort of our own homes. It's pretty amazing. And you do business on a daily basis with people all over the world. The world's getting smaller and more accessible. So digital tools are more important.
The world's going to become Mars too. I mean, how are you going to transact with Mars from handing out pink slips or money?
Leave it to Elon. He'll get us there at this point.
You think there's like a company or platform that's going to kind of take over this kind of NFT world when it comes to all these real world practical applications? Like, is there going to be a centralized kind of player that brings all these transactions online, or do you think it's a lot of different companies specializing in different areas?
I think it's the latter. It's a lot of different companies, and again, this is what we're just talking about, infrastructure and blockchain based, layer of building things on top of that. And the way that I see this hitting consumers more so than anything else, and when blockchain becomes the mainstream, is basically this technology is going to be invisible. You're not going to know if this is blockchain or Web 2, you don't really going to care at the end of the day.
Should be.
As it should be. Exactly. Right now we're dealing with too much hype and hysteria, and you have like these like Web 3 maxis that like, it's the next big thing. And I do believe it is going to be a big thing, but I don't think the consumer,
customers just want their problem solved.
Exactly. So like the problem that I have in this space right now is everybody's like, Ethereum or bust. If you're on Solana, if you're on Flow, or if you're on these other blockchains, like forget, it has to be on Ethereum. My opinion is like customers only care about three things. They care, number one, is the user experience phenomenal? Does it solve my problem, right? Like this is great UX and I'm feeling good about the use case. Two, are the fees low? Like, I'm not going to pay extra money to use blockchain, right? A gas fee or whatnot. And three, do I have true ownership and liquidity? Meaning, if I want to sell the asset, can I actually expect that the asset's going to be sold in a reasonable amount of time, and I have a verifiable ownership? If you achieve those three things, I don't think the blockchain matters. And I think everybody's drinking their own Kool-Aid right now that the blockchain is like, oh my God, it's like the most important.
End all be all. Yeah.
It's not. It's going to be invisible. It's like back in the day, Mike, and you've been an entrepreneur for a while, so you can remember this. It's like, when I was building Live Ninja, I used to remember people would ask me, well, what coding stack are you built on? And I would say, well, we're building in PHP. And they would laugh me out of the room. They'd be like, PHP? You're not building in Python or Ruby? Like, why would you do that? Fast forward to today, does any consumer go to a website and care if it's Ruby, Python, PHP? Nobody cares. They just want to go to the website and do what they need to do on the website and leave. And I think that's the same thing with blockchain. People just aren't realizing that the consumers don't really care. They just want a great user experience. If you can give them verifiable ownership and utility, they'll care, but they're not going to care about which blockchain it is on specifically. As long as the UX is good.
100%. So then when it comes to on-chain and Cryptoys, like what exactly is the business model? Like what is on-chain versus Cryptoys? How do you guys make money? What does that look like?
OnChain Studios is the parent company of Cryptoys. So Cryptoys is the product. OnChain Studios is the name of the company, but really Cryptoys is the only thing that we work on. There's nothing else that we do besides Cryptoys. And the business model is, hey, we make digital toys and we sell them. And that's the primary source of revenue through these drops. Then also we make money on secondary transactions. So every time someone sells a Cryptoy to someone else, we get a percentage of that revenue.
And that's because of the blockchain nature, like you can just trace the transactions throughout the life cycle.
That's a big part of it. You could do that also centralized as well. But the fact is consumers need more verifiable trust, outside of, hey, what happens if Cryptoys ceases to exist? They still can own the asset because of the blockchain. It's still traded after the fact. That's what's really cool about it. The plumbing exists if we don't exist, even if they have the asset. It's like taking a rare toy. Imagine, like, a great analogy is like, those like old school baseball cards, like the 1960s Mickey Mantle rookie card.
Yep. It's like $2 million.
And like the Babe Ruth ones, right? The Babe Ruth cards are like made by like a tobacco company.
Yep.
Literally, it's a tobacco company that made the card. They came in cigarettes. Though that company doesn't exist anymore, but you could still sell it, because it's a physical asset. The blockchain allows for this to happen digitally, where companies like mine, hopefully this doesn't happen, but if for whatever reason, the company ceased to exist, they still have the asset, like a rare baseball card, and can trade it, later down the line with different infrastructure. So that's what we do. The second revenues, the secondary transactions, and then we have rev shares and fees that we do with third-party licenses. So like very famous IP that we work with to turn into Cryptoys. There's revenue share deals there as well. We're coming out with merchandise and other stuff. So
what are you most excited about? Is it your own IP, or is it helping kind of bring this, really world famous IP onto the blockchain and like modernizing that experience for consumers?
Yeah, I love it all, honestly. I'm super excited about our own IP. These are our characters. We created the storyline, the lore.
So you're the next Walt Disney, basically.
Oh man, I can't ever compare myself to Walt Disney and that legacy. I just want to be the best, platform that we can be ourselves, and hopefully we bring a fraction of the joy that Disney has brought to the world. Hopefully we can bring that to other folks as well. But there are some similarities to companies like Disney, Nintendo, Warner Brothers, that we want to emulate. Mattel as well. These are legends in entertainment and toys and fandom. And we do want to bring some semblance of that to the next generation in new and exciting ways. Yeah.
How do you think about building the ecosystem around your IP? Like, do you want to branch out into, you talked about games, physical real world experiences?
So there's 3 pillars to what we do with Cryptoys. One is digital toys and collectibles. So we make the toys themselves that you can collect and interact with. The second pillar is games and applications. So what do you do with these toys once you get them? Playing different games, mini games, applications. We have AI and natural language processing. So you could have like Alexa-like experiences with these things. And then entertainment is the third pillar. So we're actually making an animated series. We're building content, comic books, stories, etc. So those are the 3 pillars that we really focus on and, try to introduce to the fans around the world.
And what was it like, raising? I mean, this is the most substantial fundraising you've probably done or been a part of, right? I mean, was that tricky and challenging, especially coming from Miami, or just given the change, in the sentiment, it was easier? Did you know these people already? I think, was it A16Z maybe was part of it?
A16Z led the A round. I would say that it was hard when we started, obviously getting some validation around what we did, and NFTs were still very new when we started raising. It's just crazy how far we've come in just a couple of years, just the NFT space as a whole. But
plus there's a lot of like shitty NFT projects.
Oh,
too.
sure.
How do you like rise above the...
Well, I think the benefit that we had was, remember, this was a side project that we worked on nights and weekends from 2018 to 2020. So by the time the bull market, quote unquote, came, we actually had a refined product. And it was a 3D interactive NFT that at the time there was nothing like that. That this was a very new kind of concept. And all of a sudden here we are, these guys with a little side project, but it looks really polished and refined. So I think that helped us cut through the noise. When we raised capital, I ran a very tight process. It was my first rodeo raising capital. So I kind of knew how to set up a process. And one of the things I did was I recorded a 7-minute Loom video of me pitching the price, such a visual product that I didn't want to send a deck. So I recorded myself giving the presentation and showing the videos. And I basically just cold DM'd and cold emailed 50 blockchain-based investors the video. And I got 2 responses out of the 50. And those 2 people ended up being my first 2 investors. And that's kind of how the whole rolling.
4% hit rate.
That's all you need. That's all you need. With fundraising is different than sales, because with fundraising, you're looking for a market of 1, to start, especially when you're starting from scratch, you need a lead. So
After you got the one or two, did you then go to others with that credibility to try to get more or bring in angels, or you just kind of had those
So
main
the cool thing
investors?
about it, and I'll give a shout out to Hutch for those that know Jose Roscoe. He owns Building.co in Miami, and he invested in Live Ninja. So and we kept in touch over the years, very close friend. And my earnout with IDT was coming to an end, and I had a few choices. I had this side project, this whole Cryptoys thing, but again, digital pandas and NFTs aren't cool at the time. So again, it was just like very much a side project. A very large VC fund was trying to recruit me to run their Miami initiatives to basically lead the Miami focus for their fund, like a very well-known VC. And the other one was basically Live Ninja 2.0, like all the learnings at Live Ninja, and now the market has changed, et cetera. And the VC one was very attractive because it was a lot of money. And I always like, hey, I get a big checkbook and I get to help entrepreneurs. That sounds exciting. Being on the other side of the table. Live Ninja 2.0 already had funding ready to go from previous investors. And then there was this little digital panda, one. And I remember sitting with Hutch. We were eating lunch in Brickell. And I show him the three options. I'm like, bro, I'm trying to make my next move. I got these three things. He goes, this digital toy concept, if you do that, I'd fund you. I'd give you some money. I'd like to invest in that. And I go, that's the one you want to invest in out of the three options? Like, that's the one you think I should go for, the digital toys? Why do you think that? He goes, because you talk differently about it. He goes, when you speak about that project, you light up. Like there's something about it versus the other two that felt more like yeah, it's an interesting opportunity. But when you talk about that digital toy company, your face changes, and all of a sudden you get excited. He goes, "I would definitely write you a check for that one." And I was like, "Damn, that's really nice of you." Of course, I didn't want to take just.
Did you feel it that way internally?
I did, yeah. That was always the passion project,
Yeah.
But of course, I wouldn't take like Hutch's money or anybody else's money unless I had a substantial round for me, because you don't want to string along just little checks. You really can't operationalize. So I said, if I can raise a little bit of money to give a foundation for a round, I'll let you know. And that came to fruition. So I was able to go back to Hutch and I said, you were right. Your intuition was right. It looks like something's happening here. So
what about your wife though? When you push those three options,
oh my God.
is she into the pandas on the blockchain or not as much?
The I think at first she's just like, sure, go entertain yourself, Will, like go do your crazy thing. The tricky thing was when I wanted to leave IDT, because again my earnout was finished, we were pregnant again with our third, and she didn't want me to leave the company because all of a sudden I want to start another startup or do something drastic without health insurance because the baby was going to be due in a few months. So we basically had like a handshake agreement that is like, Will, no crazy stuff until this baby is out into the world because we need health insurance. So I think she was hoping also that I would keep a decent job and have some stability, but I think she knew also. She's like, there's no way. She's like, I see the look in his eyes, something else is coming. So as soon as Tyler was born at Mount Sinai Hospital in Miami Beach, I was like hitting up the VCs. I was like, I'm ready to go. Got to make a move.
An hour later.
Yeah.
There's no stopping an entrepreneur, especially if you have something that you're really hot on, like super passionate about.
We're built in a weird way. We're wired a little differently. And I think what's amazing is that, and I think you've seen this too, Mike, like failure, like going after something that you believe in, even if you fail, is incredibly rewarding. And there's so much that you'll gain, even if you don't monetarily gain from it. The world seems to reward people that take leaps of faith. Whether but it might not be through money, it might be through a connection that you meet by doing that leap of faith that serves you 3 years down the line, or something that will happen because you went out there and tried to make your idea a reality. So I always encourage folks, to go for it, and oftentimes people have a tough time deciding whether they should leave their jobs and go after their idea or pursue a startup. And the question that often you should ask is, if you do the startup and it fails, couldn't you go back to getting a full-time job? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is yes. So if that's the answer, then the riskier thing is actually not doing the startup. The riskier thing is staying at the place that's kind of complacent at the time. So at least that's how I like to look at it.
And you got to do it for the right reasons. Entrepreneurship is not like, oh, you're going to do something, you're going to make a bunch of money real quick. Like stuff's so hard. It's like 5-10 years plus, like you're grinding it out. There's all these days that you want to quit. And you talk about for me right now, I'll be honest, I'm not even paying myself. I'd rather put that money into hiring other people. We're about to hire somebody for 200K tomorrow, another person for 125K. We're trying to we just opened up a second warehouse. I care much more about realizing the vision and investing in the long term. Obviously not everyone can do some of that stuff, but that's the reason I do it. I don't do it as an alternate way to make a paycheck or have a certain lifestyle. So you have to have that kind of dedication, to really want to make it work and do it for a bigger reason.
100%. I was listening to a Twitter space. It was either Twitter space or Clubhouse. It was about a year ago, and I think they asked Elon Musk. They said, "What world?" He was on the space. They said, "What words of encouragement do you have for an entrepreneur?" And he goes, "Well, if you need words of encouragement, you shouldn't be an entrepreneur." I thought that was really good because he goes, "It's so brutally hard." He's like, being an entrepreneur is like chewing on glass and staring into the abyss. That's damn.
It's such an emotional roller coaster. I mean, people talk about it, but it's very honestly today you might feel like you're the greatest of all time. Everything, you've got it all figured out, and literally within hours or days, you feel like such a piece of shit. You don't know anything. Everything's failing. You have no future. It's constant up and downs, up and downs. And I think the greatest entrepreneurs are very even keel. They know how to the wins are great. The losses or whatever, you're on your path and you just got to stay focused. I was looking, somebody posted the Red Book from Facebook or Meta. It's their cultural handbook. And Mark Zuckerberg's talking about we're never as good or as bad as the market or the media thinks we are. And that, there's this wide variances, and they say this is the reality. And that's, you got to stay smooth and calm and collected, especially through these kind of times. Maybe it's not as apparent for you all being in Web3 and there's a lot of money and interest going on, but for the standard e-commerce business or some of these other businesses going through trouble right now, you got to be able to navigate with a calm head and project strength to your team and investors and stuff as you navigate these times. Has the we'll wrap it up in the next couple of minutes, but has the external, economy or environment impacted you guys at all, or how you think about it? Or are you kind of just very focused on, building what you're building, and, you have the luxury to not have to think about it too much?
Yeah, I think for us, we're in a place where we understand that the entire macro market, no, it's not just cryptocurrency, it's not just NFTs, it's stocks, it's inflation, everything is going through a tough time right now. So to me, it's not just related to some industry specific, it's macro across the board. So for us as a team, we're just completely 100% heads down and building the best product that we can possibly build. And we can't control what we can't control. And we don't try to. We don't try to shift markets. We don't try to shift sentiment. We just want to build the best thing possible. And if we build the best thing possible, things will change on its own. And I think, we've seen it before, some of the best companies in the world are built during recessions, and they're built during down markets. It has a great way of weeding out people that aren't serious, has a great way of weeding out your competitors if they're not as passionate as you. So there's lots of benefits to actually building and taking away a lot of distraction. That if everything's in the NFT space in general, it felt like everybody was posting how they're making $500,000 every single day on some flip. It can be quite distracting for builders that actually want to build things with long-term value.
It's kind of annoying to watch, to be honest.
But it was clearly unsustainable. It was like this is an obvious.
There's a lot of, to be honest, insider trading knowledge type. Hey, in this group, we're gonna make this thing really popular. We're gonna sell it at the top. We're gonna get other people to buy it.
Yep. There was a lot of shady behavior in the space, and for me, I think a bear market is good for weeding out all the shady people, and leaving the folks that really want to be here for the next 3 to 5 years to build out the future of the industry and become foundational companies. So we embrace it, instead of shy away from it.
Any close calls in some of the other businesses you've ran in the past, getting into some shaky times, economic times, and any lessons you can draw on there that you're thinking about as you go forward?
Yes. Live Ninja, there was many times we were on our last payroll, many times. And man, those were tough on me mentally, because I think, and you have the same mentality, I could tell, because what you just said about not paying yourself and paying this person that you're hiring for 200K, you care more about your team than you do about you. When you're staring down the barrel of a bank account that has one payroll left, you're not thinking about yourself for a second. You're thinking about, I got 18 team members or however many you have that count on me for a paycheck. How am I going to get them another paycheck? So we had many times we were on our last one, and then a customer would pay that was late. They would pay, so it'd give us a little bit more time, or we'd get a bridge round of funding to buy us another month. Things would happen at the last minute. Now, I think one of the things that I would change if I were to go back in time, and things that I certainly apply to myself now moving forward, is that I wish I was a better friend to myself in those moments. Like, I wish I took better care of myself mentally. I'm actually a big proponent of mental health. And when it comes to mental health and entrepreneurs, like, nothing will get me to stop what I'm doing in my day if I know somebody's dealing with something mentally, right? Because, like, this is such a hard gig to deal with, and it's a very lonely job being a CEO of a company and a founder. I believe that mental health is the single most important determining factor on if a company is going to be successful or not, is the mental health of the founding team and the senior operators. Because if you're in a good place mentally, you could solve any problem. But if you're in a bad place mentally, it takes one email to ruin your entire week. You shut the computer and you're done. I've seen our peers shut down their businesses prematurely because of one thing. A VC.
It totally clouds your judgment. You can't make good decisions. You can't analyze the situation objectively. You're just so emotional about everything.
Correct. So I would say that, one of the lessons I learned is that pain, unfortunately, comes with the territory. It's part of being an entrepreneur, but don't let it go up here. Like, feel it where it needs to be felt and take action. Every entrepreneur that builds a successful company has to go through tremendous amounts of these moments, many of these moments, before they reach success. And when you feel that pain, because it comes, don't take it too much to heart. So, like, the way that I like to analyze it, or at least like to make the analogy, is when you're working out. When you're working out and you're at the gym, you're lifting weights. Literally, the way that you build muscle is you lift weights and it tears your muscle, and your muscle grows back stronger,
Yep.
than it was before. That's how bodybuilding and lifting weights work. So it's interesting the way your mind shifts, that when you're at the gym and you're lifting weights and you feel pain, you're
going towards the pain.
You're embracing it because you're like, this shit's getting me stronger. And like, for your mind says that shit feels good. Even though it hurts to lift the weight, you're like, yes, like, you're so happy you actually went through that pain because you're getting stronger. If you could trick your brain into doing that whenever you deal with issues and road bumps in business, you'll be unstoppable. So, like, next time a bit of adversity hits you, you're running out of money or a client leaves you or something, you'd be like, all right, I'm going to take that one and I'm going to be stronger for the next cycle, So that's the way I like to think of it. It's a mistake that I made many times over at Live Ninja, because I just was so down, on myself whenever I would make a mistake. But now you just have to realize that, success is an accumulation of the lessons you learn through mistakes. So.
Yep. I think it helps a lot to have a great partner to work through these 100%. Things with,
Oh, yeah.
Like, I didn't have a co-founder at the time, but obviously now Helen and I run the business together, and just being together on a daily basis, we're able to kind of talk through these things, and you have this shared experience. It's not just something that you feel yourself. Because if you go, let's say you have this great wife who's supportive and loving, but if she doesn't know what's going on in the business and you don't have like a co-founder, you come home and you don't know who to talk to about some of these things. Like, you need maybe a coach or a mentor, or you just need somebody that you could just objectively just spill out everything and talk through it and feel like they're listening, and you can like kind of bounce back and forth with each other. Because if you don't have that, you just bottle it up inside, it becomes really toxic.
Super valuable. 100% agree.
Last question that I always try to end on, and you kind of hit on it there a lot, but if there's entrepreneur, maybe it's their first time around listening to this, they're in a precarious spot, maybe they're running out of funding, or they're finding it hard to get traction, and the market's changed and their back's maybe against the wall a bit, they're running low on time. What would be your advice to them of how to navigate these next few precious times?
First of all, know you're not alone. That a lot of entrepreneurs around the world are dealing with similar things. So first, it's not your fault. A lot of entrepreneurs default to the I suck as a CEO, I suck as a founder, I suck as an entrepreneur. No, stuff happens to the companies. Sometimes it's out of your control. Know that what you're experiencing is part of the entrepreneurial experience, and know that there are other people out there that have went through similar problems and come out the other side. Seek out those people and ask for their advice on what to do with next steps. For folks that are listening, there are organizations like EO, YPO, LLC, which I'm a co-founder of. It's called Local Leaders Collective, where we connect you with into peer groups of folks that could share experiences. Times like this and tough times where they can help each other figure out what to do. Find people that you can lean on to ask these questions. And I think a lot of the times entrepreneurs are suffering in silence because they're running out of money, but they're so prideful about their business that they don't want to tell anybody they're running out of money.
They always have this smooth, calm, collective outside exterior.
Correct. Persona. Everyone's crushing it at the networking event. Everyone, how you doing? Crushing it. crushing it. But we know we're in pain. Everybody's dealing with shit. The thing is, you have to talk about it. You want action, you want positive change, you have to ask for help. So I would encourage anybody that's dealing with stuff, just know, hey, it's not your fault. This is part of being an entrepreneur, and seek out folks that can help you. Be vocal about it and find your tribe and go from there.
Amazing. Well, this has been super fun, not only to get to know you at an even deeper level, but also it was very, just truthful and raw, I think, and gets to the heart of what entrepreneurship is. So I think people are going to really like it, like your story and some of the stuff you shared. So really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Anytime. It was great to be here.
Yeah.
Appreciate you having me on.
Likewise, man.
Thanks for listening to the Out of the Woods podcast. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. More episodes are on the way. If you want to keep the conversation going, suggest questions, or nominate guests for future episodes, you can reach me on Twitter at Michael Martocci. Good luck and see you next time.